Opioids are a class of drug that include the illicit drug heroin, as well as prescription pain relievers.
That only means
As God is my witness, I didn't know turkeys couldn't fly.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's school board meeting. It's August 9th. Would you please all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is is public participation. Do we have anybody that would like to speak to the board? Not seeing anyone, we'll move to the meeting minutes. We have meeting minutes of December 9th. We have a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes, the public session minutes of December 9, 2020, along with non-public session 1.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
2 abstentions, motion passes. Next, we have meeting minutes of January 11th.
Make a motion to approve the public session of January 11, 2021, along with non-public session 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Abstain.
Next, we have meeting minutes, June 28th.
I'll motion approval on June 28th, public session, non-public 1 and 2 as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Ruth Ellen, does that get us caught up on some of these old ones, or still has not stand out?
I think we're close, and we've yeah, there's a few of the older ones that were pretty close, and there's one more set to this one, and I just said a July set last night.
Okay. Anything under new business? Okay. Moving on to old business. First thing is...
Actually, I have one that might kind of fall under both.
Okay, go
Sorry.
ahead.
We have 2 trees at the front of the high school that, if you have noticed walking by, are humming and buzzing. We have sprayed, they are concerning if we're going to come once we get back to school. We also, the tree that's
Because we
closest, excuse me?
What do we have?
There are paper wasps, there are mud wasps, there are yellow jackets, there are white, they look like yellow jackets, but they're white,
Whitetails.
and white-tailed bees all I've seen up in the tree. I don't know why they are all enjoying the trees together, but they are, and they're swarming. Also, the one that's over in front of the sign for the high school, the roots are also getting down into the French drain. We need to have the trees taken out. They were a gift from one of the classes back several years ago. We are looking into seeing if we can have the trees replaced with something similar and put them further away in a more appropriate spot in the event that they become inhabited again. It won't necessarily be right where the majority of students are walking in and out. But we are looking at probably needing to have those removed before school starts. I am concerned about having students walking by up to Valley View and having high school students congregating there waiting to come in the mornings with those the way there.
Just for the people watching, we've tried spraying. And
We have tried spraying a couple of times, and it doesn't seem to matter. We've gone in at night, we've done it during the day. They like that
Invisible
spot.
hives? Sorry.
Not that we've been able to find. I know that there are a few that have been up into the drains, up up along the roof line, so there may be some nests up in there, and they have sprayed up along there as well, but
I'll make a motion to have the 2 trees removed for safety reasons.
Second?
Any discussion? My only discussion is that if there's no visible nest, that means the nests have to be somewhere in the building. And we're probably going to need to investigate and find those also.
Is removal the first option, or can we work with one of the pest companies we worked with before for?
my concern about the one over here is that the roots are getting down into the French drains for the building. So,
Okay, so-
and they can't, because we did check to see if we could just have the trees moved, and they can't do that because the roots are down into the drain.
You put the whole French drain up.
Where's the bees? Same
They're in
issue?
both trees.
Oh, so it's the same issue for both trees?
Right.
Okay,
They're worse on the one on this side,
Okay.
but they're in both trees.
I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? So do we have suitable replacements yet or no?
Not yet, and I'm
It's our-
still
it's
trying
our
to
intent to
work with,
replace them.
it's my intent to replace them and to work with Larry to find a better place to put them rather than right there where the roots are going down underneath the building.
Okay. Any other discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next on our old business, we have reopening plan.
So our reopening plan that was put up to the state is pretty much our we're still open plan. And that is what you had approved back in June. That was sent to the state in June. The only shift that we are being given right now from DHHS is that they are pointing us to the CDC order that requires masks on all buses, whether they are public, private, school, all public conveyances, masks are required. And DHHS, I know you had said we're following DHHS as opposed to CDC. DHHS has given us in writing, here's the order, you need to be following this. We still have autonomy as a district to decide what we're doing with masking in the buildings. A number of area districts have decided to come back with masks. I understand that this board had voted, we're not wearing masks, we are without restrictions at this point. I do want to remind parents that they still have an option to have their students wear masks if that's the family's choice. And we will have some staff members who do choose to be masked this year. But my understanding, unless the board is deciding to make a difference in what had been voted earlier this summer, is that we are still without restrictions starting the fall, with the exception of our situation on the buses.
As far as our reopening plan, the first thing I'd like to discuss as a board member, I want to amend our plan to include community-based data for the board decision to move from one phase to another. And I want parents at home tonight saying, we're talking about this plan and how we're going to reopen at the beginning of school, almost a month away, and our community data could change drastically, where we as a board have to sit down and say, information's changed, we need to modify what we're doing. But I think what's important, and I've been watching it faithfully, day by day, we need to figure out a system within our district to do that. Watch the numbers. We've had consistently 1 to 4 cases in Farmington for the last few weeks. That's not, to me, a situation where we need to tell our children mandatorily, you've got to wear masks. But at any phase we're in, if a child wants to wear a mask, I think that's great. Or a parent wants a child to wear a mask, that's great.
We also have staff members coming in from other communities, from other counties. So we're looking at that information as well, making sure that, right now Stratford County is insubstantial. We're not in the highest level, we're in the next to the highest. But Our numbers within Farmington have remained relatively low. Again, that data is very, very difficult because it's not what I saw from the winter. It wasn't always consistent with what I was seeing on the ground to what was being reported and what the timing was. As we get into the school year, I'm the contact tracer for the district. I have a pretty good sense at that point of where community numbers are based on what's being reported to me that I in turn have to report to DHHS. I spend a lot of time with those folks. And that would also go into what I would be bringing to the board if I felt like we needed to revisit where we are. Right now, I don't see those numbers.
So when we're requiring testing, what are we doing, what are they currently doing for tests? They're still doing a PCR test?
Right now, PCR test is still the gold standard. A rapid test is essentially to kind of check to see, okay, yes, we need to go the next route.
But if we're using the PCR test, I'm sure you're aware that CDC quietly announced 2 weeks ago that cannot tell the difference between the flu and COVID. So I didn't know if we had another test that could differentiate, because that's why we didn't have any flu last year, is not because we're all masked up, is because if you had the flu and you took a PCR test, it couldn't tell the difference. So I didn't know if there was something that has been brought in quickly to replace that?
Not that I have seen. We do have access to Binax tests in district. We're in the process of looking at having that available as kind of a next step if someone becomes symptomatic during the school day, and we would have access to that with parental permission. But that's not going to be, I'm not looking to do random tests.
Right.
The state has made it available to us, but we're also getting information back from DHHS that it really isn't likely to give us enough bang for our buck for what we're going to have to put into it for resources on the ground. We're not necessarily going to be getting back a whole lot of useful data and just randomly testing 10% here and 10% there. So right now, we're not looking to go that route. I still have the option to do that later into the year if it looks like something we need to do, if we need to be testing sports teams, if we need to do that sort of thing on a weekly basis. But right now, we're not necessarily being encouraged to go that route. We have it available if we need to go there.
So I guess my one question goes back to the bus mandate. So that you're saying that order came from DHHS?
The order came from the CDC. DHHS, in the call to the districts, said, pointing back to the CDC's order, that with that, all public conveyances, including school buses, masks are mandated.
So where do they have the legal teeth to make that requirement to us?
I would say the
Based
legal
upon the governor's order?
the legal teeth becomes, if you're not complying, federal monies become jeopardized.
Have they said that?
They imply it on a regular basis.
Just a question.
Yep. Do I have that in writing as such? I do not, but it's the frequent suggestion.
Go ahead, Mary.
Follow-up to that is that the drivers don't need to have their masks on if there are no students on the bus.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. But if there are students on the bus, drivers and students must be masked.
I think we need to be very clear on day one that it is optional. That can change on day 3, but as they come back into the district, they're optional. And there'll be no mask bullying, if you will.
We're not going to shame those who wear, nor those who choose not to.
yeah.
It is a choice.
Yeah, that's,
Yep.
I don't know how you get that out there to them, but
Well, we have, one is putting the messaging out ahead of Henry Wilson, or Valley View will be doing its open house on the 30th. Henry Wilson is looking at the 31st now. High school will be a couple of weeks into the school year, but looking to put out a video message for families prior to the start of school so that everyone has access to the same information, both video and a transcript if someone wants to read it.
Got some refinements, and if you don't mind, I'd kind of like to go step by step in what this process is going to look like. So at least from my perspective, I'm only one board member, things sound pretty clear. One is on the best practices. Cleaning protocols we put last year by our custodial staff are outstanding. And I think we need to continue our cleaning protocols. Deep cleans continue to be done when required in areas of exposure. I'd like to maintain the hand sanitizer outside each of the rooms as we had last year. We can still encourage staff and students to social distance when possible. And then for the public, I'd kind of like to adopt a color-coded system that we can update as far as where we are. And green being our community exposure is low. That means masks are optional. Everything else is encouraged. Yellow is where we go from, our numbers are starting to creep up. They haven't hit the top level yet, but at that point, masks may be recommended. And then a red, meaning our community exposures at high risk, and we define the number to the public, and at that point, masks are required within the building. And I think to go from phrase green, yellow, red, I think that's pretty much either a board decision or a cooperative decision between the superintendent and the board in how we do that. The one 8 ball we're going to be up against is we don't have the emergency orders anymore.
Right.
So our meeting, before we could meet on the fly to make those decisions, we don't have that available to us anymore unless we call an emergency
We can still call an emergency meeting.
meeting. But I'd like to keep it simple for the public. I'd like the public to know, we're looking at this based on numbers, and we're looking at it based on our numbers, not our numbers over in Europe. And that we're going to watch it closely. And if you want to wear your mask, you want to use your hand sanitizer, you want to social distance, all those things can happen in our school. We're just not going to mandate it. We're going to leave it to parental discretion at this point in time and only mandate it when we have to mandate it, if that makes sense.
It,
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just thinking that if we adopt a color coding system, that may be different at each building level. A lot of it's going to depend on who's vaccinated,
we cannot make a decision based on vaccinated or not. We are not allowed to do that by state statute.
Can I get a copy of that statute? Because I haven't seen that in writing. In fact, an employer can mandate their employees to be vaccinated, and we have a life safety issue here. It's not a violation of HIPAA. The information I have is we can ask that question.
We can ask, but I cannot,
HB 220 in the past?
but I can't mandate that they do or don't and say we're going to change based on how many are or are not.
Right. And you can't restrict anybody on the premises.
On the basis of vaccination.
Right.
No, and I understand that. I was just
But
thinking
that's
that.
data,
Go ahead.
let me follow where I'm going. That's data that, and if there's a different law that I'm not aware of, I'd love to see it, but I researched it pretty intently. That's data that we don't need names assigned to it. I don't care what teacher, what staff members are vaccinated. I care about percentages within our buildings.
Okay.
Okay? So that as we're starting to increase cases, if I've got 65%, and I'm pulling that number out of the air, I don't know what the number is, I want to be clear, 65% of our staff unvaccinated, I'm going to be more likely to lean on the safer side than I am to say, okay, we've got 90% of our vaccinated, maybe we're pulling that plug too early if
Okay.
we've got
I see what you're
90%.
saying.
That's kind of where I'm looking at.
Okay.
So I'm not looking at attaching identifiable names to numbers, but I think as a district, we need to get a picture of, we know from ages up till 12, our children right now aren't vaccinated because they can't be. But from 12 on, can we get that picture, and from our entire staff, not isolating teachers, paras, whatever, but our entire population of employees, can we get that vision of what it looks like within our buildings? Because that's going to be important for us to make decisions, especially if people don't want to wear masks, because the higher those numbers are, I think the less likely the need is.
My other question, you're talking about numbers. Right now, one of the levels of transmission that's given, there's actually 4 rather than just yellow or green, yellow, red. We have low, moderate, substantial, and high. So I don't know if we want to add an amber in there or an orange, just to,
Use those same acronyms if they're out in the public, and that makes sense. I
Yeah.
want a system that identifies
No,
with the
absolutely.
community, that they get an idea of what's going on in the building.
Yeah, and that may be good for somebody if we had a sign coming in the door to say, where they see it's green, oh, now it's yellow, it's changed.
Right.
I need to pay attention to that without, a blast coming out here or there.
well,
So maybe a good
we can post it
indicator
on the
for.
website and have, here's what's changed.
You can take your 4
Right.
categories and assign the letters in the 4 categories different colors.
Right.
So it does kind of both visual.
And that would allow some students coming in if there's a change that they may not have been,
Aware of.
listening to, because they may not be, listening to that type of information.
Right. And if they come in on a bus, they'd have to have it anyway, at least for now. That may
Right.
change. That
But
may change.
As far as entering the school, they should, quickly be able to assess if things have changed,
Right.
especially when it may go to, require some social distancing or mask recommended or mask requirement.
Right. And if we're going to social distancing in the classrooms, then that does require some additional shifts on our part.
My vision there is when we can.
Right. Right.
We had to take a lot of desks and put them in other classrooms. I'm not looking to do that. But when you're in the hallways, when you're outside, we're going to have that congregation. If you can maintain your social distancing, they're used to it, let's do that, and let's empower the thought that the more we do that, the less likely you have to put that mask back on, because every child that I've talked to doesn't want to wear a mask.
So, go ahead, Mary. I'm going to have a couple.
Shift you just a little bit, so if you want
Go
to.
ahead.
I'm out of touch. I'll wholeheartedly agree that. What are our current quarantine requirements? If we,
The quarantine requirements, the last that I've seen it's probably been 3 weeks since I've seen an update. If someone is a first-person contact with a household member, they will be asked to quarantine. There is not currently a travel restriction in place if you are traveling domestically.
So, and what is the time period for that?
It's 10 days.
It's 10 days.
It's 10 days.
So,
Or until the abatement of symptoms if someone becomes symptomatic.
so if somebody in the home has COVID,
Yes.
then that time period can be more than 10 days?
It could be if it's 10 days and someone develops symptoms on day 9 of their quarantine, it's until they are beyond, at least 24 hours beyond being symptomatic themselves. So in that, it could go longer. But,
Because I know in some cases last year, I heard a scenario that it was up to 17 days based upon, because it was 13 days then, and somebody in the household had it, and
Well,
I
it
think it ended up being a maximum of 17.
well, if one becomes symptomatic, everyone else is 10 days. Next one comes down, they get spread out another 10 days. And so if you had people going down like dominoes in the household, I did have families that the last one ended up quarantining, I think, for almost 30 days because of where it fell.
my concern was that when the emergency order was pulled, I never really heard what was pulled with it. So we still have teeth that if we have an actual positive, we'll do our contact tracing, and we can enforce quarantine.
So if there is, I am still required to report anyone who is within kind of the bubble within a classroom. They may not be sent to quarantine. That will depend upon what DHHS then tells me based on what the circumstances are in the classroom. If I have high school students who are at least 3 feet apart, who are not all over each other and wiping their noses and wiping it on the desk, that sort of thing, they might not be sent out. If I have preschoolers who are all over one another, that may be a very different call. And that's partly why I spend so long on the phone with DHHS, because it's explaining the circumstances of each instance that comes up and who and how many are involved.
And if they are sent out, is the Dover co-op available yet?
The Dover Co-op is one of the other things we're going to be talking about under old business. The Dover School Board is meeting tonight. We are looking at that being a very real possibility. I have another meeting this week. And with that, looking at, that would be for grades K through 8. It would not be into high school. And right now, we would have 5 or 6 seats that would be for medically, we're looking at as a medical requirement for somebody not to be in. It's not going to be a bounce in, bounce out. It's not going to be something that somebody can say, oh, I'm in quarantine, so I'll do this for 2 weeks. It's going to be a semester's choice
Well, if
to
that's
do
the-
that. And that would be a placement as an alternative placement that would be done through the superintendent's office.
Okay. If we quarantine an 8th grader, they have, with no remote by choice, no remote in the classroom, they're just out of,
So no remote by choice, there's a difference there. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't have access to anything, and we will still be using Google Classroom. There may still be some ability to remote in. It may not be all day, every day, but there will still be access to those materials online, because that is what we are using now across the board. It's, that doesn't go away.
okay.
On the quarantine requirements, as these get firmed up by DHHS, can we create a portal on the website and incorporate into our orientations what parents expect? So parents know that if dad contracts COVID-19, keep your kids home for 10 days, don't send them to school.
Right.
Just so that parents know how we're going to do this. My understanding, and it could have changed, but quarantine used to be if mom contracts it, kids quarantine for 10 days. On the 8th day, if dad contracts it, then it goes another 10 days, and that cycle continues. So parents need to be aware that that's the process, so we're not bringing it from the outside, bringing it. And then my next area that I wanted to touch upon is, as we're getting closer, I haven't heard an update on the, I think it's 12-year-olds and above, or 6-year-olds and above on the vaccine. But should we check with Stratford County Community Health or the state to see about running a vaccination clinic?
I've let them know that whenever the next round is available, I am more than happy to run it. We've got a pretty good system down now, and we're on the list.
It's quick.
Yeah.
And again, on the vaccinations, going back to my discussion, but I think it's important for, at least for me, to sit at the table, and it's probably going to take some thought, and I respect everybody's privacy, I respect everybody's decision, but staff percentages-wise and student percentages-wise, if we can come up with, you know, what our local community rates are of vaccination.
34%.
But I'm talking in a building.
I don't know what the building is. I published on a state website, it's 34% for Farmington.
Vaccinated?
Yes.
Yeah.
but that's not necessarily because
Right.
a number of our staff members are
That's
coming in
correct.
from other
As
communities.
far as the community, as far as what the staff is, because you could have 80% of the staff that lives in Farmington, but
Right.
it's their personal choice,
Right.
so.
And that's going to be real, I think, real helpful data, at least with me, making those decisions.
Well, for me, it's not as important because being vaccinated does not prevent you from getting it, does not prevent you from transmitting it. It may lessen the effects that you have it if you get it again, or get it for the first time after you've been vaccinated. But still, I think, to me, it's going to fall to what our rates are in the community because the vaccination has only so much resistance for you to get it. I mean, there's probably some, but I don't know if there's been enough data for anybody to call it science yet.
And there's also discussions about boosters that may become available. When the staff clinic was done, we did the Moderna shot. There's been talk about a booster this fall. If that becomes a thing, again, I'm happy to make the space available. We had both our staff and Newt come through, so we could do that again.
Now, one of the things that, in a generic reopening plan, what are some of the things that we need to get done before the school actually opens, as far as our learning management system, any orientation with teachers and staff? I mean, what is our schedule regarding of all the things we need to get done
Okay, well,
to have a good opening?
understand that learning management system is not going to be a flip a switch, go live September 1. Kathleen and I met with Otis today on the next step of implementation and looking at getting those pieces in. They're still doing the data input. We will have sections of that ready to go so that we can start doing our staff training with that. We have the optional PD days on the 26th and 27th. I will be running a couple of sessions there. Kathleen will be doing a little bit. We'll be working with staff. On the 30th, when all staff report, we'll be doing an overview of here's what's here, here's what it's going to look like, but we will have a significant amount of training that's going to have to go into not only using the platform, but also changing our grading and reporting practices and uploading all of the assessments to the system that they are then teasing out the different pieces of data so that we can get the reports. It's not going to be a switch and go. We have scheduled already the 2 early release days and our first full PD day for Otis time to be working on that. My hope is that by Christmas, we are in pretty good shape to start then looking to see where those other pieces go, and we will be getting some data back before then, but it's not going to be a quick up, and because we need to get all of those assessments then uploaded and shifted to using the learning progressions for reporting. So they're inputting all of the rubrics,
Yeah.
but the assessments need to be changed so that that reporting can happen. I can say, I've got this multiple choice quiz that I typically give, but those pieces need to be linked to those rubrics so that we can then report them.
So
That will take time.
I will be looking forward to seeing the implementation timeline, whatever that is.
I can give you pieces of it. I don't have the whole thing yet.
Can I pipe in?
Because I think it would help the board's perspective of understanding what needs to happen, when it needs to happen, and if there's any concerns, the board can, specific concerns in that plan, then the board can ask questions earlier than later.
Sure.
To make sure that it's, okay, we understand and we agree, or no, we agree on most of this, but our concern is here, in this one point, and how can we improve it or potentially. So that's my reason for asking.
So back as a district, when we started looking at learning loss, we looked at the power school system. We made the investment into a learning management system because Power School can talk to the learning management.
Right.
When we tried to parse the data out of Power School, at least at the high school level, it was an extensive 8-hour or longer process to get generic data of number of students and parse out the protected information under FERPA or the privacy requirements. So how involved is it a process to have, at least at the beginning, day one or the 7th when we really start school, to get Power School to talk to our learning management system, so when we need that data extracted to say how many kids within the district are sea level or below, based on what's coming in from Power School, is that possible?
There may be pieces of it that are possible, Tim. Part of it is because the data that's in Power School is all points or percentages based. We will have that capability in Otis, but we're also looking to be able to say, here's the standard, and has the student mastered, approaching, not yet, or, So those are the pieces that we've got to get talking to each other. That takes a little bit of
I
time.
get that's the long term, and I get that's the direction we want to go. But I don't want to find out in December that 50% of our student population is failing, or I don't want to find out in December that, hey, we got a truancy problem where we've got 80 kids out of district.
Right.
So on September 1st, between looking at these two systems, I'd like to set a priority of, we need basic information so that if a child's at a C or lower, we can red flag that weekly and get that child intervention. Or if the absences from Power School report to our learning management system, we need to red flag these so that there's a different protocol put in place so we're not having 80 kids out running the street. So I get where we're going and I get it's time, but we have these priorities that
Right.
we need to start looking at September 1st, not
Oh,
out here
absolutely.
in
Absolutely.
December, and figure out how to do that. And at the same time, we can't have principals spending 8 hours trying to pass the data to get what we need.
Well, and that's why I have a,
Because quite frankly, I'm going to be asking in principal reportings what these numbers are. Because I want to see from month to month how we're doing on progress, what our truancy rates are, or what our absentee rates look like, and what's our student performance, and do we have to stop and do something differently than what we're doing if it's not working?
and one of the things that Kathleen has already started doing is meeting with principals around the data that we have and looking to see what that is going to look like as we are moving into the school year and making sure that we get kids started on what do they need now so that we're not waiting. Because we do have data from the spring. We do have data from summer school. And then looking to see how we start those interventions right away. I know that Henry Wilson has already done that. High school met today with Laurel on some of those pieces. So it's already started, and so it is on our radar.
Okay, because we're less than a month away.
I'm very, very much aware of that.
My other concern is, and I caught this at the last meeting where Power School was managed by our IT director. Has that changed? In
I
that
have-
you were looking at hiring a consultant.
So I have a job description that has been put back up into the portal for you. You'd asked me to make some tweaks to add that as special projects manager as well.
Okay.
In the meantime, I have a consultant who is helping me with Power School on getting the pieces turned over for the new school year. She's going to be meeting with our administrative assistant staff to make sure that everybody is doing input the same way. She's also going to be meeting with my new high school guidance counselors around scheduling and what that looks like, because we still have some schedule changes we need to make. So we're not, and she's been wonderful because I can call her and go, okay, how do I find? And she's been able to get me in. So that's been extremely helpful, and she lives here in Farmington, so.
So I guess my next point is, and I'm only one person, but I think to take this whole ball of wax and put it on one person without a backup plan within the district probably isn't our best practice. So as we're moving forward, do we look at
I am cross-training anybody I can.
building principals are responsible for the buildings, delegated to the vice principal or dean of students to maintain it. And then if we have a failure somewhere in our system, we got a backup plan where one can help the other. Is my vision of which way to go.
We're looking definitely at making sure that I have more people cross-trained for those pieces, but I want to be careful as we're doing data entry that we're limiting the number of hands who are actually doing some of that so that it's being done the same way. I need more people to know what to do, but when I have too many hands putting in the data, it doesn't all get in the same format, and when then I go to extract for state reporting, it's a quagmire that I then have to go back and fix. So we're looking to do cross-training to make sure everybody has it, and then you will be responsible for this part, you will be responsible for this part, rather than having 6 people putting in a little bit of everything and all of it being a little strange.
So how does that change at the teacher level?
At the teachers, when I'm doing the state reporting, I'm pulling pieces from the administrative side of Power School. So it's the registration pieces, those number of pieces. We will have to go through training with the teachers too, both in Power School and in Otis, that this is how you're going to be inputting data. And Kathleen and I will be sitting down and setting those settings in the back side of things so that teachers aren't going to get to decide, well, I want this to average this way as opposed to that way. The decision will be made and it will be set from the back side that they can't change. This is how it gets done. So it's not going to be a free-for-all. And that'll be added to our admin discussion of where we're going. We've got some pretty good ideas of where we're looking to do that. We'll get some additional feedback and get that nailed down by next Monday.
So when we talk about teacher training and different stuff, we added 2 days this year to their training. If we need something in these areas that's going to increase our awareness on tracking student progress, make us aware, because if we have to offer a 2-hour after-school session or whatever to make that time period go quicker, then we can discuss it as a board.
One of the things that I'm also looking at doing, hoping that I will have a more robust sub-pool to be able to do release time for teachers, so have a 2-hour training, have a sub in for the day. I can get 3 groups of teachers in by shifting the sub through the building. So I've used that model very successfully here in the past and in other districts. I'm hoping that I will be able to potentially get 6 people on any given day to be able to do that. I'm an optimist. I work here.
So where do we stand on our sub-pool?
It has grown somewhat, but it remains to be seen what that looks like when we start actually making phone calls. I've had a few more people who've come in, and I have a date for the 25th that will be for our beginning of year sub-training, having folks come in and walk through before the school year starts. This is what we're doing again. But, some years we've had a list of 35 people, but only 4 were willing to come in at any given time. So
to summarize that, you still have a need for subs.
I still have a need for subs. And if you have,
listening,
if you're listening, I need a sub.
Okay.
I need subs. And if you have a CDL license, I want to talk to you. I will buy you flowers. I will feed you candy. Please. Yes, I do have a potential interview set for this week, but We need
So-
subs for drivers.
Remind
We
me
need drivers.
to give you a name.
Awesome. I will remind you.
Someone who's currently doing it in Rochester, just 2 hours a day.
Okay, I will hound you for that name, yes.
I don't know how successful you get at getting them, but
So one of the actions that this board took for retired certified teachers is we upped the substitute pay with the COVID money. Is there a way, I mean, we lost 12, 15 staff this year. Is there a way to reach out to our retired people to say, hey, you might be tired of
Oh, I already have.
retirement?
I already
If they're
have.
aware of those increased numbers and,
I made them aware of it before they left.
okay,
Enjoy your summer, we need you back. Yes.
okay.
go ahead.
We can't partner with a neighboring school to help with the bus driver issue. I mean,
The state
I
has
get
made
it,
it
I get it that they're separate employees.
They have to be
I also get
rostered
they
in
have to
each
do another
place.
background check
Right.
to work for another district, but it just seems to me like it should be able to be done.
It should, and this is something that we have been hounding them about for the last 3 years. Hounding the not only the Department of Education, but also the Department of Transportation.
So who makes,
That right now is saying we can only have drivers rostered on one roster, and that's a DOT decision.
But is a sub, is that considered a sub? So one of our, you're saying one of our drivers who maybe only drives a certain amount of hours a week cannot be a sub for Newt?
That's what they've told us. Now, in practice,
mean, it's time
we
to
have
really
helped folks out.
lighten
So
that up.
We have had to say, okay, I know that you can't sub for us, but I've got a kid here, and you have a bus over there, and you have a kid here, and I have a bus over here. So we're going to swap kids, and we're going to get this done, because there are days that that's the only way we got kids where they needed to be. And we have a very good relationship with our neighbors, and I have fostered that, but the state has not made that an easy process.
Mr. Chair, would you be interested in me sending an email to the Commissioner of Safety and have a discussion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if that needs to be followed up with a letter from the board or the superintendent, please let us know.
Yep, I think I can open the conversation and then
I would
go
think
from
at
there.
this point, any district would jump on that, if
I
we
know-
collectively get together and said, hey, look,
I know that Dean Cascaden has been bugging them like on a weekly basis.
I'll call him at home after the meeting. So,
Is this going to be a long meeting?
hopefully,
While on the subject of transportation, will we be asking
Parents that are capable and willing to transport their students this year like we did last year?
We don't have much more capacity. If I can bring on I have more buses than I have bodies to drive them. If I'm able to get another driver or two in, we're golden. Without that, we may need help. And if we are requiring masks on buses, not because we've said it, but because those beyond us have said it, I know that I have families that are saying, not my kid, I'll drive it.
Yeah?
And that's certainly their prerogative.
I think we actually went out and asked.
We did ask last year. And there will be no social distancing on buses.
so, man, that brings up a good point for parents as they're making their decisions. We're required by law to provide transportation, and we're going to provide that transportation the best we can. And your child's going to have to wear a mask while on the bus because we can't do it. But we reached out to the community last year, and I was one of them that drove a student into school every day, and a lot of parents did. So I think it makes our process go better because we didn't have the big spread last year. We did certain things that we know worked. That's one of them. Cleaning's another. Social distancing is another. So why not continue that?
Certainly.
We're not going to require it, but why not ask for that help from the community? And my experience with this community is when you ask for help, you usually get it. So I think that's a wise decision within our plan. Then the other thing I'd like to do and look at along those lines is, once our buses get rolling, let's look at our capacity and how many kids are riding the buses. So we don't have a route with maybe 5 kids.
Oh, we shuffle those to make sure that we're as balanced as possible. That's been the practice,
Okay.
yeah. In fact, those were fairly fluid for a few months until we kind of got a sense of who was where, because we did have some ins and outs as well. And my biggest concern is if I have a bus driver who becomes ill for any reason, it doesn't have to be COVID, that's where I don't have capacity. I am nervous about being able to do sports transportation this year. Fall is typically difficult anyway, and right now many of our fall sports trips are leaving before our afternoon bus runs go out or get back. So that's going to take 1 or 2 drivers and send them out, and then I have to somehow figure out, we may have to, and I don't have doubling up of runs to pack them all in like sardines. I may have to do 1 run and come back and do another run. We're still looking to see, and again, if I can get some more drivers in, that will alleviate a lot. Other issue that we're facing right now is that fingerprinting is taking 3 and 4 weeks. And so, and that's even with LiveScan. LiveScan has gotten backed up. They've changed their system. They're sending people up to Tamworth. They're scheduling 2.5 weeks out, and then it takes another 1.5 weeks to get them back.
So if-
Inked prints have been 3.5 weeks to get returned.
So if we have a bus driver that's working in another.
I cannot share prints. I'm
So even if
required.
the person is already a bus driver. And passed all the background checks. That's not on a file that, somewhere.
I am not allowed to use someone else's file.
To me, it's crazy.
They might have been naughty between the time that they passed that one and they came to me. That's what I've been told.
I have the same thing when I put CDLs on. He could have worked across the street yesterday and comes to work for me, and I have to pretend I've
Start
never.
all over.
Absolutely.
We are-
That's why I'm saying, if we could get permission to use neighboring bus drivers as subs and
Right.
send it, they go through the process, it would definitely help with athletic trips.
If we could share a sub pool, that would be huge, because we're not likely to have, well, hopefully not going to have subs need subs the same day.
The other thing with subs, and I touched on it when Rob was here from YMCA, is YMCA maintains a transportation service. I don't know what their driver's hours are, but is it
They're
worth?
having the same trouble. We had this conversation. They're having trouble getting drivers as well.
Okay.
Because I said, hey, want to get your CDL license? I can keep you busy.
Yeah.
No. They're,
Okay.
nope, I am, just about anybody I talk to. Are you interested in driving a school bus? Would you like to be trained?
With the board's permission,
Does anyone have an objection to myself or any of the board members putting it out there on social media?
I don't.
I wouldn't do it without permission, but
I would.
We have
Yeah,
a
you
big-
would.
We have a big sign. We just need some place.
yeah, we're gonna move.
Thought we already
I know.
figured that out.
Yeah.
I thought we had it figured out too.
Yeah, Pike
They
just,
were all over the place last year.
I mean,
Signs on 125.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we're
Right on the side
talking
of the
about, yeah,
place
exactly.
across from Pit Rental is available, I said in the last meeting.
Okay.
mow the grass there.
You just need to tell me. I'll get right there. You know,
I will talk to Lynn.
you can be sure if it's something not,
Strap it across 2 big boulders.
I've got plenty.
Yeah, you got rocks.
I can bring some special, I got some special ones. They won't be carried away.
So,
Go ahead, Tim.
almost at the end of my list. Learning enrichment. So our teacher's contract requires an after-school expectation for students in needs. So we define their hours as 7:30 to 3, but then 2 paragraphs down, if a child's in need, there's an expectation for help on the child. But we really don't define what that expectation is. And I don't expect a teacher to be here every day after school. Kind of like to know what that is, particularly at the high school level, so then we can look at what we need to supplement as far as other learning enrichment that has to do with the learning loss.
What we have done in the past, and I'm asking them to do again this year, is for teachers to include in their syllabus what days they are available, so that we can have a schedule of what that looks like.
Okay.
And then, so that it goes home to families, but then we also have that so that we can start seeing where the need is. Right now, in talking to Lynn, it looks like if we were to run a late bus in conjunction with our after-school care, I could do that at 5. Right now, I don't know that I'm gonna have the drivers to do an intermediate bus, say at 3:30 or so. But at 5 to 5:15, we should be able to run that late bus to get kids home. Survey I have out currently is looking at, I have about 65 responses. Of those, probably 54 or so this morning were looking at, yes, they would be interested in participating in before or after school care. After school care is by far the one that people are looking more for. I have, I think, 10 or 15 looking for morning right now. And of those 50 some odd, about 27 were looking for after-school busing right now. Or that was, I haven't looked at it since this morning.
That's pretty easy numbers. 20% is looking for school, 80% is looking for after school, and 50% is looking for busing.
So
Yeah.
our MOU that we'll be getting to next defines our ending time at 6 p.m.
It does. And I have kind of, the majority are looking to get out at 5. The next group around 5:30 or so, some of those said, yes, they wanted busing. There was a smaller handful that was looking to stay until 6. And in talking to Rob, he said, we want to look at the survey, and I've sent him the results that I have so far to kind of get a sense, are there enough to stay open until 6? Does it look like 5:45 is probably the best? If he only has 2 people, will they stay until 6? We'll see. So that part, they're looking to see what the response is.
Okay.
So the majority were saying they wanted it through 5 o'clock.
Okay. Anything else on the reopening?
Yep. I got 2 more things.
On the reopening?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Truancy. We have to look look at our process of how we're looking at truancy, because at least in the past year, that process didn't work. So kind of what my vision is, put it out to the board for policy, is if a child doesn't attend school and is unexcused with no notification of the building, typically the auto attendant calls, instructs the parents to call the building. If we don't get an answer within whatever you think is a reasonable time, that absence needs to be followed up, in my mind, with a phone call to the parent. We need to track that parent down until we find out where that kid is. At that point, when the principal or vice principal makes that contact, they have the authority to make the determination whether it's excused or unexcused. And this concerns me for a couple reasons. One is there's no call, there's no response to the auto attendant. We don't know where that kid is. And that's a
sometimes
huge...
when we follow up with a phone call, we still don't reach a parent, but we can certainly try.
But we need to take that to the next step, because at that point, in my mind, we got a missing kid. And that creates a problem, because the parents, might be they might work at the shipyard where they can't get that phone call. They sent their child to the bus stop in the morning. So we need to look at that from a truancy aspect. We need to look at it from a child safety aspect as well. And if we don't reach a parent, maybe at that point, it's a welfare check, and somebody goes to the house to see if the kid's home. Where's your mom and dad? How do I reach them? You know, that type of thing. But we need to make sure the child's safe, and we need to make the parents accountable for the absence, because when we hit that 5-day or 10 half-day periods, I'm going to be expecting a complaint charged against the parent if their kids are unexcused for those times. If they're sick, that's fine. If they come within the parameters of an excused absence, that's fine. But if these kids are being allowed to run the street and not in our schools where they belong, in my mind, parents need to be held accountable for those truancy. And with the phone call, we're not all of a sudden going to decide and find out in December, hey, you know what, we got a problem here. We nip it on day one. And that should be part of the student assemblies. That should be part of the parent-teacher meetings when they come in the building. Be clear.
So.
At this point, I have no applicants for the position.
We'll discuss that in non-public.
Right. What is our how do we currently handle it?
Currently, the auto attendant goes out. Phone calls are made typically as it gets closer to that 5. And the 10 half days, the 5 full days.
So up until 5 half-day absences, just goes out auto call?
There are phone calls made, but I don't know that it's necessarily every absence there's a phone call made.
I can tell you I've never received one. And I'm getting the same answer there, right?
And typically, there's a note that comes in the next day. But what I'm hearing is that you're expecting a phone call that day beyond the auto attendant.
Well, that's Tim's thought. I guess it's going to probably need some additional discussion from the rest of the board, but
I was gonna say, I got the phone call for an absence the first time, because I forgot to call.
I will say, I forget to call it in every time, and I've never gotten a phone call.
So it's inconsistent.
A lot can happen in 24 hours.
So your note can come in the next morning. Yeah, we're not the.
I mean,
we're
when
not-
you
I mean, there have been instances before
Where a student isn't at school and the parent did not know that the student was not at school.
Absolutely.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
That's a big issue.
Well, there's been times when buses have pulled up to bus stops with no kid on the bus, and nobody knows where the child is. And that's scary as well.
Yeah.
we'll probably talk about that when we talk about the open position.
Sure.
We have, and we've had no applicants. How long has it been open for? Posted for?
That was voted back in May.
Okay. So it's still, and where is it posted?
Ed Jobs and internally, and it's been sent out in the list that went to the town.
And what are the requirements for the position?
I will have to look that up. I don't have it off the top of my
Okay.
head.
Maybe we can move up the advertisement in the town, maybe put it on the TV channel.
It is running on the TV.
Oh, it is?
At least the link to come to the school website and see.
What the job openings are. I saw it Friday.
Okay. Okay, anything else on the reopening? You had one more? You sure? Just one?
Not close to 10 o'clock yet. My last thing is how we communicate as a district. I know we use the website. I know we use the Facebook page. To me, School Messenger seems to be a valuable tool. I'm not sure how many parents really know about it. I found out about it when I came on the board. So I've had kids in the system not knowing it's there. So again, as we do our parent-teacher meetings at each building level, we should promote the School Messenger, how to sign up for it, what it does, how to make the selections so you're not getting 5 different calls, etc. But I think as things change, potentially, and hopefully they don't, hopefully we get through this year like we did last year, but if things change, we have a method
Oh, absolutely.
to reach parents using different means. And I'm assuming we're paying for the service. It seems to work well. Let's promote it. Let's teach the parents how to use it and kind of push
I will say I am trying to make sure that it's used
appropriately.
That we don't put out multiple calls within a given day or series of days unless those are absolutely necessary, because people don't have a high tolerance for multiple calls. So, hence trying to also make sure that they understand how to self-select what type of calls they get. Because I also don't want people to just ignore something that comes up on a phone that says it's coming from the schools, because that also adds to our inability to get through to somebody if we're making that attendance call. The attendant call went through and now we're following up. If they're looking at going, oh, it's another one of those calls from the school because it comes up saying Farmington High School, they just don't answer it.
Can you do a
So-
flyer?
Can you do a flyer for, I think you're going to be joining us in the park on September 11th with a table. Maybe there's a one-page sheet that says, here's what it is. Here are the different functions that you can opt in and opt out of. You know, it's an incredible tool, but if it's not used, it gets rusty.
I will see what I can do.
Do it.
Okay, moving on to Mainstay. I have this put on the agenda to start there.
Brian and I had I had a conversation with Ryan, and Brian sat in on it. His mic wasn't working, so his eyebrows were very expressive, but he didn't do a whole lot. He kind of, you know. We will have a proposal for me to send to the board by Friday. And with that, we won't have a full report done on everything else, but Ryan was confident that he can at least give us, here's what it would take to be able to do what we've outlined we're looking for response time, what we need for boots on the ground, and what he understands of our systems. The advantage is it's not the first look that he's had at the district, because I've worked with him in the past, so there was some background there too, and we've had some pretty frank conversations about what is and what is not. So we were able to, okay, here's what has changed, here's what stayed the same, here's what I'm needing to make sure that if I have, you know, something that goes down, that I have a response time that doesn't lose instructional time, because I don't get that back. But how do we make that work in a way that's going to be beneficial for both of us? And we should have that for Friday. It may not be early Friday, but it should be for Friday. And we'll get that put up in the folder. He will send it to both Brian and me.
Moving on to YMCA.
So you have a copy of the MOU in your folders. Rob and I have been kind of back and forth on a few of the pieces this week, wanting to make sure that we have something that makes sense, but that isn't, you know, more details than it necessarily is going to be helpful for.
Right.
So
I'm going to stop you right there. So
Sure.
regarding the YMCA, at the last board meeting, the board had authorized you to work with YMCA to create a memorandum of understanding for a before and after school program.
Correct.
So as far as people watching this, that is what we'll be offering. That's the firm that we'll be partnering with to provide those services, and we're currently working on that agreement to make sure that's in place and ready to go for the start of school.
Yep.
And when,
If you are looking at your hard copy packet, it's probably the last thing on the bottom, because that was the last thing that I got printed, so.
You know, because that's negotiation, we're gonna talk about that in negotiations, or we're basically gonna have it on the forefront. It doesn't matter to me either way.
Either way,
I only have one minor on the MOU, I thought it looked great. One minor clarification under the insurance that I think can be discussed in public.
Go ahead.
So I'm on, try to get your
Page
page
two?
number. Page 2 at the bottom where it says insurance requirements. It talks about the $1 million liability. It says per person. Typically, isn't that a $1 million general liability?
this was their
This is their language?
language.
Okay, if it's their language, I'm
Yeah.
okay with it. If it was ours, I was gonna,
No, this was their language, so.
okay, I'm good with that. Their policy is per person. Okay, I'm fine, that's,
Yeah, it's
I'm good
better
with
for
that.
us. Yeah.
They've been at it for a while.
Yep.
Yes.
Where is that setting?
It's on the bottom of page 2, the last
Well,
paragraph.
Number 2.
I'm not even at the document yet.
Oh, okay. Would you like a hard copy, Charlie?
Fine. It's tough to
Pass
run
it
the
down.
meeting and follow along. so.
Pass it down.
So the one thing that I spoke to you earlier about was just the COVID.
That's on the front page. They did add that their practice is to follow whatever protocols are in place for the building in which they are.
Okay, good.
So, if we say it's gonna be this,
Right.
they're gonna follow that.
Because I was concerned about mixed signals depending on who you listen
Correct.
to.
Yep,
DHHS,
yep.
CDC.
No, they don't wanna.
The governor,
They don't wanna confuse
president.
our kids. Yeah.
I think that was the only thing that
I believe it's about halfway down on the first page,
Yeah.
Charlie.
but no, if that's been modified today.
It's an indented bullet beyond the indent, so.
So the current hours that we're potentially going to,
Right now, it's written for 6:15 to 6 o'clock. As far, well,
6:15
they would have access 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Probably inviting students in at 6:15 gives them a little bit of a chance to kind of get things ready for the kids to walk in. And so far, we've not received anybody looking for really before 6:15 or 6:30. And then potentially written through 6 o'clock, we'll see what they're looking for. If they have a need to go that late, they will. If it looks like they don't have enough kids who will stay that late, they may cut it down a little bit.
So for the parents that are listening, it's our intent to open up at 6:15 a.m. And then the child will go from 6:15 a.m. to the building that they're in to their classroom.
Correct.
So that's before school day. Once school gets out, we'll go to possibly 6, more likely 5:30, depending on the survey data. So
Correct.
if you've got a need out there to go to 6, where
Yeah.
is this survey and
The
how do they?
survey is on our website. It's also on our Facebook page.
Okay.
And it was sent out to parents at Henry Wilson and Valley View via School Messenger. So with that survey, get in, let us know. If you're wanting to hear back from the YMC directly, please include your email address so that we have a contact to get back to you. If you're just wanting to give us general, we're thinking about it, that's fine too. But we need to know what it is that you're looking for.
do we have a date that we would need to know the enrollment by?
I'm hoping to close this survey by the end of the week so that at that point they can start looking to make sure they have all of their staffing solidified.
But what are we going to be telling parents from saying, if you need these services, you need to tell us by what date?
You need to tell us by the 13th of August. And I will put that out in another, which is Friday, and I will put that out in another blast to let them know.
Yeah,
And then
definitely.
as far as the actual enrollment process, that will go through the Y, although we will be facilitating that, so we will have those pieces available here.
Now, that seems to me a little concerning, because if the board is just we're just entering in this agreement, and today is the 9th. We're giving parents 4 days?
To give us feedback as far as setting parameters, that's not to
Okay.
enroll, that's
Okay.
giving us feedback.
But what is the deadline going to be to enroll? Start
The
of school?
deadline to enroll is likely going to be a rolling until they're full.
Okay.
So we're looking at, once we know what the parameters are, for them to be able to put out, here's your enrollment packet, here's what this looks like. Obviously, first come, first served. If we still have slots, something changes for a family, and they realize on the 10th of September that, yes, they do need childcare, if we have slots, we're going to work them in.
Okay.
So
So there's not a date set of when they have,
there is not a date set there. We're just
Good.
trying to get
what people's
what the
needs
needs are. Yes.
And then,
Yeah, first step.
but,
So when this board, and I think it was off camera, I think we came out of non-public. When this board authorized for the superintendent to enter into the memorandum of understanding, we wanted a before-school childcare, which is basically going to be a basic babysitting service for people that have to go into work. Our afternoon program provides for childcare, but our goal is to offer with that childcare a homework learning enrichment program for some of our children that may have suffered learning loss during COVID in the last year,
or may need,
or may need extra help.
Right.
or may
right.
want extra help.
Yep. So I guess from a policy perspective, as we're going down the line, educating parents what's going to take place, one of the things I'd like you to think about is, and the MOU calls for a release of parents so that Y personnel can communicate with our personnel, and communicating with teachers, how do we make that cross communication happen? I think in K through 6 it might be easy, because if I'm not mistaken, K through 6 is one teacher, and then 6 to 8 we go into multiple. Is that?
It's actually K through 4-ish. They start to move a little bit at the other levels. They
Okay.
didn't as much last year because last year was different. But one of the things that we have done, and they are looking to hire as many of our people as are willing.
Yep.
I know that in programs that I've been involved in the past, we've had a liaison who was school-based, but working with the Y to make sure that there was somebody who was here during the day, that if there was information the Y need, or whatever program we were using, that they could then reach out to those other folks during the day to help gather that information and make sure it got back to. And I'm looking at working out something that looks like that, but
Okay.
we're still trying to figure out exactly what those logistics are.
I just want to make sure that somehow we
Oh, yeah.
figure out the cross communication between the Y and us, so that our children benefit.
One of the other survey questions that was included too was, were parents looking to have their students participate in a homework club or some other type of enrichment? I think I had 3 no's and like 60 some odd, well, yes. So,
Good.
yeah.
And the Y very
Likely, this is not their first.
Oh, they've already
rodeo,
done this.
so-
They have a whole curriculum that they use with
Right,
this.
so that they can, I'm assuming, help you determine what that liaison person should be, at what level that person should be in order to be the communicator between the two groups.
And we're going to need one in each building.
Right.
I mean, there's no
That's what I
question.
meant.
So where are we at as far as setting rates? And, because I know we talked
That-
about considering supplementing that with ESSER money.
So we talked about that as well. That is another thing that was part of the survey.
Right.
What would you be willing to pay for this type of a service? To kind of get a sense of where people were. And I saw this when we ran FAME as well. Often if a service is completely free, there's very little buy-in and there's very little consistency of, well, it doesn't cost me anything, so we're not going to bother, or it made it tougher that way. But certainly, we have access to a sliding scale. We can potentially do some subsidy along with the learning loss piece through ESSER for the afternoon program. And in talking with Rob, they also have access to a sliding scale. They have access to scholarships through the state. And then, so between what they can offer and what we would be able to offer, if it were truly a barrier for families, we will be able to work with people. But it helps to have at least some ownership there too. So we want to make sure that we've got something that's going to make sense for everybody. And if somebody can't contribute any of it, then we will certainly work that out. I'm not going to have a kid left without the opportunity.
I don't have the proposal in front of me. Do you remember the cost of the weekly morning session childcare?
I will pull that up. I don't
I think it was 40 or 45, I'm not,
give me just a second. It was so for before school, 4 to 5 days a week, it was 45 for the week.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion to set the morning tuition rate for before-school care at $45 per week.
But are we at a position that we can do that, Ruth Ellen, based upon we don't know what the hours of operation we're going to boil down to?
I
And the
think
services that they provide, because that
We
may,
may want to look to see what the hours, if the hours end up being shorter, we may be able to shrink that a little bit.
So I'll amend my motion not to exceed $45 a week.
Okay.
And we can allow the superintendent the authority to set that lower.
And then,
second,
I'll second that.
second by Mary. Discussion, Ruth Ellen, go ahead.
okay. So you're looking at, that would be the amount that parents would pay before sliding scale or anything else kicks in.
That's not
That's the
to exceed.
maximum amount.
Yeah, if there's an income-based program that the Y offers, or they can get a state subsidy, excuse me, the maximum they would pay would be the $45
Right.
per
Okay.
week. My understanding is if you were receiving state aid in certain programs, the state's going to pick that up
Right.
because we're not subsidizing that morning environment. So if they're eligible for any type of that assistance, we make them aware of it. But I think parents need to plan that worst case scenario, if you need before childcare 5 days a week, it's $45 per week through our program.
Okay. For 4 or 5 days, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that rate may drop depending on the hours that we're operating.
Correct.
If it goes to 6:30, it may drop slightly
Right.
instead of 6:15 but, yeah, wait till this information.
So I have another motion.
Go ahead.
I want a motion to set the after-school program at a rate of $20 per week. And the reason I'm making it at the $20 per week is our first year priority is going to be to mitigate any learning loss that we've had over the school year. If there's an adjustment in hours, that weekly rate comes down, then that just means the school board's subsidy of that or any other that we can combine with that would be less.
Is there a second?
I'll second with possibly a friendly amendment that we make that for this school year.
Yes, that's
Okay,
my intent
okay.
is this school year.
Okay.
Discussion? I'm certainly in agreement of supplementing that, but I think the number I had in my head was $30. I think their rate that they were proposing was $90.
Was 90.
And if we talked about bringing it potentially up next year. I mean, it may need to go, I don't know what your thoughts on the second year, as far as funding it was, but whether we're going to potentially be 30, 60, 90, or we're going to be 30, 40, and then to 90. But right now, if the service is $90, estimated that that's what it's going to cost us, what's a good proportion cost sharing? And for me, I was more attuned to the majority share of 60.
I'll accept the friendly amendment at 30.
I'll second.
Okay, so now accept the amendment at 30. Additional discussion. I think that will help us get more people using it, and also help with getting more students involved in improving their education.
So here's my question.
Go
So
ahead.
then we're looking at the Y would bill them for the 30 and send us an invoice for the additional?
Yes.
Okay,
However it needs to work.
right. So we'll just have to work out that
Our
cash
systems
flow.
and the grants,
Okay.
you know.
So the cash flow with the Y too is, this is going to be a fairly significant check out of Easter. However, the Y's expenses are monthly. So if we have to take that subsidy that we're doing and break it down a month, it's a discussion to have with Rob.
Right.
Because I don't want to
it-
kill the cash flow within the district.
Right, and we don't, yeah, we'll just have to. We report monthly, so, but it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever needs to work with their system and what their expectations are as far as their cash flow. I mean, their cash flow may be on a weekly basis, and for us to be on a monthly basis, it may be some issues, so that's what we gotta have to work
yeah,
through.
we'll work through it, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think, just so parents understand the reason that we're looking to subsidize, and one of the things that I did is I looked at a brief outline of what that afternoon session's going to look like, looked at the learning management, not the learning management, the learning enhancement that goes along with that program, kind of tried to figure out the time and assign our parents' investment based on what we're investment into the educational aspect of it. So we're not paying for daycare per se, we're paying for your child to enrich and learn in a learning environment outside of the school, to get that C student to a B student or A student, or to get that student that's really struggling some extra individual help outside of the school realm with potential transportation. So for the parents that are listening, as we define this program, we've put out the cost, they kind of understand the structure of what we're trying to do. When do we expect to have information out to our parents on, what the program schedule will kind of look like, how they get transportation, how they're going to pay their fee, how they register, et cetera, so that, and kind of what our dead concrete startup date is for the after-school. Do we start on the 1st when we only have 2 days that week? Do we start back on the 7th? Is it the week of the 14th? Parents kind of
Right.
need to know that as they're
Absolutely.
making those
So
plans to go forward.
our first step is to have me authorized to sign an MOU. Once we get that done.
Which we
because
did.
I was authorized to write it, but not to sign it yet.
I think the motion was to enter into an MOU,
Okay.
but we'll clarify it.
Okay. Making sure that you were good with it, then we'll sign it. I will contact Rob in the morning. We will start looking at when we can get that. Ideally, I would like that to be to parents by Monday at the latest, so that they have some time to plan what things are going to look like going forward. And so that he knows he's got some folks that, yes, they've already signed up. He's got income coming in for this. It's not, well, open the doors and hope they show up. So,
So any other discussion on the motion? As far as, did we set the rate?
you set the rate, well,
We didn't vote on it.
you haven't voted. You have amended your motion, but you've not voted the motion.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
See, I didn't lose my place. Almost. So I'll make a motion to authorize Ruth Allen to enter into a MOU with the YMCA for our before and after school program.
Second for discussion.
Discussion.
The only quick changes, just to reiterate, and you kind of hit on it, is if the hours are going to change from the original proposal, then I think the rates should reflect those changes.
Okay.
So if it was $90 a week and we're going to end at 6, if we're going to end at 5, there's some savings there, and I want that weekly to adjust that savings, that
Prorated.
prorated, yeah.
I'm okay with that. Definitely. Because we set that basically prorated to be a third of the anticipated rate.
Well, I'm okay with a 30, but I mean, when we calculate that,
We expect what we're going to be invoiced from the Y to drop if they're not here as long,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
in a nutshell.
Okay.
Yep.
The other side, the billing side.
I mean,
Right.
30 would be based on, as we have it in front of us right now, if that adjusts, that we need to adjust the
I don't think we do.
30 down.
I would leave it at 30, I think.
I
for-
think you could leave that at 30. It's still not a bad deal, but the part that we're going to be putting out to ESSER, if we're cutting off, if it's 2:30 to 6, we're looking at,
If
2.5
it ends up being
hours.
$85 or $80,
Right.
we would be
Exactly.
reimbursing the 50 instead of the 60.
Right.
Right. That's my concern. I mean, I don't think you're going to go,
I don't think it's going to change that much.
yeah, and for a parent perspective, I don't think you could hire a teenage babysitter at $30 a week. Might be $30 a day, but I don't think you're gonna, I don't think you're gonna get the childcare impact and the educational impact that this program is gonna bring forward.
See, the $1 an hour I got when I was in high school sounds,
Well, we can discuss that when we're discussing superintendent pay.
Thank you so much. That was not a suggestion, that was a historical
Thought she was
moment.
looking for a part-time job.
Why, has your rate gone up? Because if that's still your rate, I got some.
You got some
He's got 2 grandchildren and he'd love to have you. And if you haven't met them yet.
Anything else on this topic?
We've got one under old business.
Okay, go ahead. Tim.
Okay.
Did we just vote on that motion?
No, we didn't, actually.
I don't think we did.
All in favor to reauthorize Riddell to
Oh,
go into
aye.
the MOU? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tim, you had something else.
Yeah, okay, so we've discussed the learning loss and the need for enrichment at grades K through 8. What's our plan at the high school?
So we are looking at not only through real time, but also those after-school pieces. We may end up doing a similar type of enrichment or homework club after school. We have had that in the past here, and certainly could subsidize that, paying staff to stay. We could do that through ESSER. We've had kind of mixed response to that, but we may want to say, get a week or two into the school year and see what our response would be, put it out during the open house with families and see if that's something that we can get up and rolling. If you prefer to start it right out of the gate, we can. I will have to start looking to get some staff
So I
for that.
guess, what can we do or offer that is going to make our high school students want to be involved? I mean,
One of the things that
this
we've
is-
one of the things that we've done in the past is rather than to have that it's specifically like a monitored study hall after school, because frankly that's as dull as dust. Looking at some other clubs that give some of those same skills that are transferable but aren't necessarily homework skills. We've offered a chess club. We've offered clubs that have some engagement part to it, but that also hit those skills of logic and critical thinking and those other pieces that transfer to those other parts. Robotics is one that is huge that I'm hoping to revive again. Even just really getting our kids involved in music and sports, it's phenomenal what it does for their grades oftentimes, because there are an awful lot of transferable skills there.
So, Department of Education is offering a tutoring program where they're providing families an allowance of $1,000 per student for those student tutoring services that are being provided by certified teachers. Do we have any information on that program within district?
I will get it.
And if we don't, I guess my question is, and at one time there was a state contract that was awarded to provide this. I don't know whether it's the same that I saw from the commissioner's post, but if there's such a program out there, is that something that we can also do in district? So similar to our Y program, we have older high school kids that are at this building that if they need tutoring service or help in some of their stuff, we have the ability to provide that service.
It would have to be after 3, but yes, it could be done. And there's not as much of an issue with the gap between 2:30 and 3 with the high school kids necessarily. I mean, yes, they need to be supervised, but it's not we still have to have people that could do that.
Yep. And I guess the other thing that, at least I saw as a parent last year is I saw the kids themselves in classes stay after school and form their own, I'll call it a clique, to study. Because some were doing well, some were failing, and through no adult intervention, these kids took it on themselves to form their own little groups and move forward.
We have in
So-
the past had groups through the Honor Society as peer tutors
Yep.
that were also available for student help.
So I guess in my vision is, one of the things we're lacking, and one of the things that I commonly hear is, when we're looking at solving these problems, we don't ask teachers. And they're our boots on the ground. And there's a communication failure between at least us and them, and probably a little bit below us. The other group of people we don't talk to is the kids. And how do we get the kids involved to take ownership of saying, hey, what do you need to thrive? What do you want us to provide for you that's going to make learning a better environment? And capitalize on those things that are working. But I think, waiting till December when the first report, I think it's December
late.
or November when the first report cards come out, I don't want to find out then that we're not doing so well. I want to know and have these services in place for September 7-ish that's going to address any learning loss that we suffered over COVID, and it's going to move our children forward for the better. And I don't have the answer to this.
So, Kathleen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I hate to put you on the spot, but that's something to do.
Get used to it.
Do you have any ideas on how we could engage our high school students in after-school activities that would be enriching or help them in their educational needs?
Some of the ones that you've mentioned about involving kids in what would be traditional activities, like you've said, sports, but also music, robotics, the idea of must have the robotics components within the district.
We have had, I just need to get coaches now.
Right. So there's that piece I agree with you, is coming from what would the teachers suggest, but also what would the students want. I think those are both very good questions. I would need to honestly take a look at what has been done before, try and get a sense of numbers and involvement to see if that's giving me some guidance as to what I might suggest.
Right,
But
because I think some of these things they've done in the past, the enrollment, I don't think the numbers were that large. I mean,
Well, we had a number of factors. One, we didn't have a late bus
Right.
to get kids home. Which is why I would really love to be able to do a bus at, say, 3:30 instead of waiting until 5, because
Right.
we may have that after-school help component, but not staying until 5 o'clock.
Right.
Sometimes it's just an hour
I mean-
or so.
I mean, some of those things that were listed were specific, whether it's the chess club or
Right.
something like that.
And a lot
I
of
mean,
times the clubs are an hour or
Or,
so.
and in sports, typically those are specific, maybe
Right.
basketball. I mean, do we need to find something that's more general where a majority or all the students can participate in and would like to?
Well, and every year we have.
And that may then break down into subgroups or categories, but
Well, when we budget for clubs, we always budget allowing for those clubs that a teacher comes in and says, I've got a great idea, I'd like to start X. Or a student comes in and says, hey, why don't we have a club for Y? You know what? Let's see if we can find an adult who's willing to sponsor, and let's do that. And that's why you see sometimes the clubs that we have, it's not a huge stipend, but it's a start to at least give an option for something different to meet what kids are interested in. And I know that surveys have been done. I don't know, I'm not going to claim that they've been done well. Certainly willing to put out with Mr. Roberts some additional, particularly at the high school, to say, what could this look like?
I mean, what's the possibility of creating a tournament atmosphere on a quarterly basis for those groups to obtain their goals and win a prize? Whatever it is. I don't know, just a thought. Joel, you had something?
I would add to that, I've hopped on this before, not recently, but in recent years, is that I think we need to pay particularly close attention to what the senior experience looks like. I don't think just the advisor can pull that off. We've had several students their senior year want to get out, like come to us for early graduation. And my question always is, why do you want to leave early? I mean, they pulled me out of the old high school kicking and screaming. I didn't want to leave. And it always leads me to believe that the senior, what's that?
You haven't.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, that's true. There you go. Well, there you go. But it leads me to believe that the senior experience itself is not as strong as maybe it used to be. And I just think we need to take, and I know this is important for all classes, but I challenged some of our principals in the past. I haven't Mr. Roberts because he came in on a crazy year, but challenged them with that sort of thought, like what's the senior experience going to look like? What's going to, beyond the classroom, obviously we want to have, good, solid, strong academics, but beyond the classroom, what's going to really make them go, wow, I don't want to miss my senior year here, rather than just go work early or whatever. Go ahead. Sorry. Oh, I'm letting him go ahead like I'm the chair. Sorry, just an old flashback.
I was going to go anyway.
Yeah.
But just hopping on what you're saying, Joel, and I've seen it, and I really experienced it this last year during COVID for the first time, was during the class competitions, Spirit Week. The excitement that were in these halls was phenomenal. The competition that was there was phenomenal. These kids were up till 11 o'clock at night working on their banners and their projects, and it got really, really competitive. So in my mind, we have to find a way to take that energy that they had during Spirit Week and bring that into our enrichment program. And I think the only way we're going to do that is by asking these kids, how do we go about this? And where Charlie's going with that kind of carrot at the end, just like we do on Spirit Week, hey, here's something you could win.
I've got Fitbits.
And maybe if it's, maybe as we're looking at that senior class individually, maybe some of that carrot is some help with their senior trip that hasn't materialized in the last couple of years, or help with one of the graduation projects that hasn't materialized.
Yeah, being able to do grad night, which we haven't done for a long time.
And the other, that's one example, with a carnival week. There's other things that you do, but I think over the years we've lost, not intentionally, we've lost the community connection to some of those events.
real simple things, like we used, on years that we did snow sculptures, we had judges come up from the community, chief of police or fire chief, whoever, selectmen, or wall decorations taking place during basketball games, because that's when it falls, is during that season, and having community members come in and judge. I don't know how that's been lost, but it's been lost in recent years. And I don't think it's intentional, but I think it was important. I mean, a lot of community members will say, oh, I see they did their walls, but it wasn't in attendance nights and things like that. Just something to think of, so.
Step to the mic. You gotta come to a mic.
Because you haven't been here recently.
I know it's your favorite seat.
Yes, sorry. But
No, I do agree with somehow either if there's any historical data, but like getting a heartbeat from the students themselves. Because what we also want to look for is those voices from students who don't attend the Spirit Week or the Carnival, but have a real interest in an area that's currently not something that we might think to put on a list of possibilities. So really engaging a lot of students, even when you spoke earlier about clubs that just meant, that notion of like a learning hub is something that is a positive thing that is evolved through COVID as some districts couldn't get together. I might not have put that myself on a list of possibilities, but if I had put it out to students, and they might feel comfortable putting out that idea, which you mentioned about just getting together as a small group to collectively choose to work together. That could generate some other ideas that we might not think of.
And to have a space to do that, because not everybody has a home that's conducive to being invaded by teenagers. Some do.
Like Joel, I didn't want to leave my senior year either. I came from a smaller high school, and my particular class was very competitive and won things starting as freshmen throughout our high school career. But one of the things we did every year, which can involve everybody, all the different students, was it was kind of related or went along with Spirit Week, but it can start a little before or it could be something separate. We did skit nights, and every class came up with their own skit. They had to create it. They created all the stuff that went with it. I mean, what we did with chicken wire and paper mache was just phenomenal. They did their skit, but then what they did at say, you're going to have from February to March 15th, and then on March 15th, what you're going to do is you present it to the community. The parents come in, and we actually put on those skits for the parents, and then the skits got voted on by the community.
Yeah, I mean, that went off very, very
That
well.
was we loved that. We loved that as kids, and you had the kids that could act, and then you had the kids that would rather do props. You had music to go with it. I mean, it involved a whole bunch of different skill sets for kids, and brought the community in.
And that carries over a 4-year period.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
This program,
Right.
now it's gone.
Right. It went every 4 years, and as sophomores, you picked your skit for that night, and off you went. So, just a lot.
Was there a theme for that, or was
Nope.
it just completely whatever you want to come up with?
Completely random.
Now, they
Time
must-
limit?
I think there were. I don't know. Yeah, you had to have your skit within a certain time frame.
now, will the skits have to kind of be pre-approved for content?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, yes. Yes. Although looking back, I can't believe we had some of those outfits we did, but yes. Yes.
I mean, that's
Yep.
another place too, to follow up on that. We've got Farmington Town Players, they're starting to come back now, past COVID. We've got a prop room of costume. If it's not there, it probably doesn't exist. Or it can be made into something like that. And I can see the motion that you're talking about here. We have an excellent director, we have some great cast members, group members that would come in and say, all right, so your freshman year, we're going to help you with this. And then your sophomore year, not so much help. And by the time they're seniors, they're on their own.
We started with the class advisor was the person that was in charge, but basically the kids decided what they wanted to do, again, within the parameters of what the school allows. So your overseer was your class advisor
Excellent.
each year.
Great idea.
Interesting. Tim?
Laura, can I ask a question? One time you told me that, and I think during your interview, it was enhanced. Every child can learn, but they learn in different ways. So as we're talking about these skits, do you see any value to assigning an educational topic delivery to a skit so that they make it fun and our kids are actually teaching other kids through their skit kind of a subject matter that's going to make them better?
I think you're taking the
Okay.
It could end up being educational, they don't even know it.
Right.
But you gotta give them the voice. If
Yep.
you say, here, do this, then it's not.
So I'm okay with the fun clubs after school. But I guess one of my biggest concerns is for at least a certain percentage of our student body, our delivery of education, even though everybody tried real hard, our kids didn't thrive as much as they normally do, okay? And our teachers worked really, really hard to get them to, but the situation that they were put in, it made them very, very difficult to deliver what they would normally deliver in an isolated classroom.
She also asked how to get buy-in to get them, how to get them to buy in.
I agree with you, but how do we fix that educational part that they lost? I mean, I'm all for after school and I'm all for fun, but my vision is how do we also add that educational enrichment that some of these kids are going to need?
One of the things, Tim, is not making it so overt that they run away in droves. One of the programs that I ran in another district several years ago, I was charged with doing a summer program that was get everybody in and make sure it's academic, but make sure the kids have no idea it's academic. And
I'm
it
good
was
with that.
essentially like Camp Spinach. So I said, you're building a lasagna, but you don't want the kids to know that the vegetables are in there. So grind them up really small and work it into the sauce, but make sure that they are having a blast. And we did citizen science. We did, we took them to the dump. They had like a swap shop. And so they grabbed stuff. They were making Rube Goldberg machines. They had to explain the physics involved. They had to do, they were slogging through swamps, collecting data. They were having the time of their lives. They were doing an awful lot of academics, but it wasn't, and here's where you turn this in. It was here's where you publish your findings to this group who are now going to take your data as part of their research. And it was authentic. And we need more of that just with what we do.
So here's
That's what I
your
mean by
skit.
experience.
You're
Yeah,
writing your
absolutely.
skit.
Experiences go into your education.
Yeah.
And they're gonna carry that into
Yeah.
the classroom. They're gonna carry
As you
that.
pointed out, it's gonna be something different that hooks
Yep.
each kid.
Yeah.
But once they're hooked and school's fun, no matter what the activity is, it's like, well, I want to be there for that. So I
Right.
got to be here. That's why we see our basketball players do so well in the winter. Like, I got to be at school and I got to be on time and I got to get my grades up. I mean, there's the carrot. I mean,
I
some of us need
guarantee-
carrots.
I guarantee you, if you're doing a program like a skit thing, that they're gonna learn math. They've gotta go out and measure. They've got to figure out,
Writing the skit.
they have to write the skit. They have
Generating
to,
ideas
they
with
have to
kids
manage their
don't do that,
time
right.
to be there at the right time.
Exactly.
They
So
learn
that's-
timing, they learn, there's so many things that they can learn that they don't know they're learning, you know? So what, they have to go out and figure out how many sheets of plywood they need and how to cut them and things. They're gonna do that because that's headed toward the goal, but darn it if they didn't learn something. I don't know.
That's why Nature's Classroom is always so popular.
Right.
Right.
They didn't even realize,
Yeah.
a lot of them I don't think realized, well, wow, all the stuff they were learning.
Enterprise
But
City's
it
the
was,
same way.
it was presented, school was presented in such a different, hands-on, outside way that it just hooked so many kids, and that's why they still talk about it to this
We
day.
get off on a
Speaking
tangent.
speaking about that, then where are we with Nature's Classroom?
They haven't
COVID.
reopened yet, that we've
Okay.
been able to say yes, because actually it's this year's freshmen who didn't get to go as 7th graders.
So if
So-
they open, what's our plan? Are we budgeted for that? Is that a fundraiser thing? What, how?
There was a fundraiser, and those monies were refunded at the end of when that didn't happen. I'd love to be able to get trips for more than one class because they didn't get to go.
So let's look into that.
Yeah.
As we open in here, let's look into that, because that is a program that we lost for a couple of years. It was very, very successful.
I mean, I think the other thing, Tim, that is lacking because of the COVID experience is that a lot of these students have been kind of locked in, and I think they need to have to be in more of a group setting where they can basically be themselves and get to feel comfortable in their own skin, which, when they've been locked down, it's been lacking, and hopefully it's not that they're even more insecure than we think they are.
So I mean, I get it, and I'm open to everything that's been discussed in here, but I also don't want to lose sight of the data of, we have an A student that all of a sudden we're seeing C's across the board. How do we do an intervention and identify that student and get them to where they need to be? So I think there needs to be a combination of both, and I think, particularly with COVID, the mental health and some of the social skills that the social clubs are going to help are going to be outstanding. But I also don't want to be where we were last year in December saying, let's look at this data, it's not looking good.
To speak to that, one of the workshops for the optional day that I have coming up is mental health first aid for staff.
Okay, anything else under old business?
Yes.
Oh. That's right, that was on something we said we were going to do. That was regarding the positions.
Yes. Stacy and I did have a conversation.
We did.
So Stacy agreed to sign up for everything?
No.
She did
I
not.
volunteered Joel for everything, actually.
Don't stay home next time, will ya?
Yeah, we almost voted you for everything last week.
Yeah.
We took a little pity on that. So if we go back to last week, we had school board committee list. And going down, the first one Josh was on was policy committee with Mary. So, I don't know, Stacy.
I mean, I'm happy to take that over. I know
Okay.
most of it's been done electronically the last,
Okay,
so
Put something
that's
up
fine
there
with
and
me.
then Each of us goes in and
so
edits.
I'll make a motion to appoint Stacy Lozay on the policy committee.
Again,
All in favor?
Aye.
Next one moving down was buildings and grounds.
Sure.
Sure you want me there?
Charlie doesn't miss those meetings. That's the alternate that's there.
I don't mind being the alternate. I mean, it's up to you. I was on it before. I thought I was still on it. I guess not.
So I'll make a motion to put Joel on the buildings and grounds as
Second.
alternate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next was capital improvement plan. Boy, it doesn't get
That's a
any more
fun one.
Doesn't get any more fun than that.
No.
I don't know, something.
I mean, I'll do it, doesn't,
It's,
And that was an
it's
alternate.
an
Tim
alternate
doesn't miss
position,
many of
too. I
those
mean-
either.
and the ones I do, they lie about me on the public camera, but,
Maybe the lies are better than the truth.
no, those weren't. I mean, I never said I wanted to appropriate $2 million for projects, but
So if you're comfortable being the alternate, I mean, Tim's usually there. So how often are they meeting?
They meet monthly. It gets a little bit more frequent than that as we get into budget season up into December, trying to get that last piece out so that they can take the pictures and make the cover and
And promptly put it back
Publish.
on the shelf? And promply put it back on the shelf?
biting my tongue until it bleeds.
So have you ever seen a charter on the capital improvement plan or how this was?
I have not.
Okay.
The charter originally was a planning board function, and the selectmen
I knew we'd had the
took that back
conversation.
over, which they could, and that was fine. And they've been leading the charge ever since. I've sat on it probably enough years that it's satisfied my
Curiosity? Yes.
and I have a different take on the whole
And, yeah, and,
capital improvement plan, so
and my seat
I don't want to bore
is,
everybody with it.
just by virtue of being superintendent, I'm on the committee, so.
But that's not true, because I did a little bit of history searching, and I searched the warrant article that formed,
Yeah.
actually took it from planning board to the Board of Selectmen. And the warrant article says the Board of Selectmen shall appoint a capital improvement committee.
Interesting.
And I've never been appointed, and I don't think you have.
No, I haven't.
So it's just interesting the way that it's
Kind of more.
kind of morphed out there. So I'll be asking that question at our next.
It morphed during Superintendent Welford's,
Tenure.
because he wanted to be a part of that, and the
But
board-
the warrant article says the board can appoint anybody they want,
Yeah.
with the exception of part of the warrant article, it has to have or the statute, it has to have a planning board member. So other than that, it can be anybody in the world, the way that the taxpayers voted on that. And that's the question that's the last warrant article I was able to find, and that's the question that I have on the structure. And again, it's advisory. But that's going to be my question at the next meeting.
So I may have one less meeting to attend? Probably not, no.
Probably not.
But that's also an alternate. Did we
Yeah.
decide on?
Well, we don't know. 'Cause
Okay.
We don't know.
It's actually at the
Let's
discretion.
table- let's
It's actually at the
table-
Why
discretion.
don't we
'cause
table that one?
Table capital improvement
Yep.
until we get.
I mean,
Tim, you're just on your own till then.
Don't miss the next meeting.
I may,
Be mad.
but at one time I heard we had 2 slots there for board members. So it's, I don't know what their vision is.
There was a point we did have 2 members attending.
There were 2 selectmen there the last one when
Well,
Arthur decided to tell stories out of tail. But I'll second the table on the capital improvement until we get direction from them.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving down to data governance.
everybody's doing nose goes.
What is it?
Do we need board
So-
representation on that?
Yes.
Okay.
I need to
That's-
have at least one member. I mean, it doesn't have to be 2. I need at least one. Annually, there has to be a meeting to review our data governance plan, and it needs to be voted annually by the board. We have done that. Typically, it's been the IT director who has run the meeting, but I've been part of pulling that piece together. In the absence of an IT director right now, and in the event that we end up outsourcing that will likely fall back to me, but we do need to do that per HB 1612. We need to have that annually.
As little as I need something else to do, if you, Stacy, don't want to do that, I will do it.
Are you meeting just that one time, or is it leading up to?
It's not typically more than 3 meetings a year unless we have a major issue that we have to address.
And it's mostly got to do with how our data. and
It's
how we
getting
keep
that
it and-
piece together.
So-
They review the general plan. They don't review necessarily the
Data, right.
all of the pieces of our data recovery plan, but all of those pieces that say, here's your process for making sure that this stays safe, your process for that piece.
Yeah, that's an area you have expertise in.
I don't, but I can.
And
Rock, paper, scissors, or?
your next,
That's a little bit more involved with that.
your next committee's a little bit of work, so if he's willing to bail you out
Yeah.
on government, I'd bail.
I mean, I'll do it.
Okay,
I have people that can prop me
I'll
up.
nominate Charlie King.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Last one is learning loss.
That's a fun committee, and that's really where you're going to have a stake, I think, in how we go forward. That's a communication between the admin team that I'd like to vision, again, going out to the teachers and the students. Very successful last year is how we identified a lot of major issues and implemented remedies real quick. Typically, when we kind of slowed down, we went down to once a month. You might have periods, if we start seeing data that doesn't look real good, we may go, we've gone as much as weekly, we've gone to bi-weekly, and we're now down to monthly meetings. Probably see that kicking back up once our administrative staff gets settled with the opening of schools.
Works for me.
Make a motion to nominate Stacy for the learning loss committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What do you know?
Thank you.
Leave it one more.
Sorry, folks.
No, it's good, we got it done. Moving back to, I think we just have public input. She'll have some people in attendance. Well, not hearing any public input. Next thing on the agenda is the next meeting, which is the 16th. And we have some manifests to sign. And with that, it's only 10 minutes to 9. I'll make a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A:3, 2, A, B, and C, nominations and resignations. All in favor? Aye. Everyone have a good night.
Good night. And you get a break while things get broken down?
Still betting on